opted for remote learning instead. And what the CEBR found is that students could save up to £6,555 a year if they chose remote learning over a traditional university education. And that's because they would be accumulating less debt, saving on day-to-day living costs, but crucially, they'd also be able to earn whilst they learn. And that way they could get a real head start in the labour market whilst without having to forego a high quality education. So for many young people, this could be a real and rare win-win scenario.
You know, definitely, I can sort of see how it would appeal to definitely some learners. And in terms of like my suspicion is that sort of the pandemic kind of changed the face of education to a degree. Obviously, there was sort of like, you know, people learning like without sort of going into university prior to that. But what are your sort of thoughts? I mean, I don't know if it's the scope of the research, but do you think that the impact of the sort of pandemic, you know, people's kind of reevaluated the way they're going to study?
Absolutely. I think that mass disruption to education during lockdown has prompted a big rethink among young people when it comes to their university options. You know, they had their worlds turned upside down, didn't they? And students who went to university at that time were forced to do remote learning on campus. And a lot of the things that they thought they would get from their university experience were really taken away from them very quickly. And I think that was you know, a very sobering wake-up call for students. It taught them that actually a lot of the experiences and rites of passage that used to be the norm, I suppose, especially for my generation. I'm a millennial and I went to university 15 years ago. You know, we can't really take them for granted anymore. But more than that, they're also realising that actually there is more than one way to go about getting an education and getting out there in the world and becoming a success story. Actually, you don't have to do it through a traditional, you know, on-campus education. If you did it remotely, then you'd be able to save a huge amount of money, you know, up to £6,555, but it could be more depending on your circumstances. One of the case studies involved with our campaign estimates that she saved up to £10,000 by not going to a physical university due to the fact that she could go out and earn, get a driving license, become more financially independent, and so on. But actually, you know, young people can make the most of, you know, all the opportunities that the Open University offers, not just in terms of getting a good quality education, but it also offers societies which they can join, like gardening and gaming, so they can still meet other young people, but then crucially go out and get a job, and they can expect a significant 61% increase in their earnings. That's equivalent to a weekly uplift of £136. It really isn't nothing. So I think that's why young people are really rethinking their university options right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's understandable in terms of from a financial perspective. And I mean, you've kind of touched on that, Iona, you've talked about the sort of the financial impact. And I mean, like, what does the research tell us? I mean, obviously, you've given us some really interesting facts and figures, really, in terms of what they can save. But from a sort of, you know, qualitative perspective, in terms of how do sort of young people sort of generally feel, do you think, in terms of, it might be once again outside the scope of the remit, but sort of thinking they want to go to university, but, you know, possibly bricks and mortar, but I mean, it is what it is, really. You know, financially, it's sort of not easy. You know, the things are going up and rents going up. A lot of things are going up, really. So, what do you think the word is on the ground, like with sort of young people, people from any age, really, who sort of considering going to university? What do you think their thoughts and feelings are, the sort of cost and the way things are spiralling?
Oh, well, I think the class of 2023 are incredibly worried about the cost of living and how that will affect their university experience, and whether they can even afford to go to university. So this research found nearly a third of school leavers believe university is not affordable, and a fifth are not sure whether they will be able to go to university this autumn. And that's a really sad state of affairs, because nobody should have to miss out on a good education because they're concerned that they cannot afford it. And yet, you know, in recent times we have seen with rising tuition fees, a maintenance loan that hasn't kept up with the cost of living, actually, and rising accommodation costs that have been partly caused by the general mortgage crisis that we're seeing. due to the fact that so many student landlords out there will have mortgages on their home, and they'll have seen their interest rates going up in recent times. All these factors together mean that young people are concerned about whether university is affordable right now. So that shouldn't be the only reason why young people think about a remote education instead. Actually, I think that just as much as they might kind of look at the negative aspects of going to, a traditional university, they're looking at and embracing the positive aspects of a remote education, because 2 in 5 young people want to be able to earn while they learn. 29% want a better balance between their education and other life commitments, and nearly a quarter want to live at home rather than move away to university. And that's very understandable when you think about just how much money they could save in the process, and actually end up becoming financially independent sooner because they're able to get a job, build their earnings, make some savings, and just become more of an adult with all the responsibilities and resilience that involves.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I'm guessing that sort of, like you've mentioned there, the social aspect. Obviously, sort of university, you'd like to think the learners are there first and foremost to sort of build their career prospects and learn, but there is a social element as well, and you've kind of touched on that, Iona. I mean, I suppose remote learning, it's got its advantages. You can sort of save money, no doubt, whether it's travel cost or sort of accommodation. There's a lot of advantages as well to it. You can get a job, like you've mentioned there. But the other side of things, what about for learners who, from a social perspective, you kind of touched on some of the options they have, but I think part of university is also sort of, for a lot of learners, sort of being on campus as well. I mean, what about the sort of social element? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think firstly, there's a bit of a myth that if you opt for remote learning, then you are totally missing out on meeting other young people, having a rich social life and broadening your horizons. Actually, the OU offers lots of societies covering all sorts of things like gardening and gaming. So that's a lovely chance for you to meet other young people, but also, improve your skills, and find new hobbies and interests that could stand you in good stead for your career as well, given how many young people are pursuing kind of portfolio, hyphenated careers these days, and doing much more of their work online as well, through side hustles and influencing and so on. But also I think that we need to maybe rethink the whole idea of what it means to go to university. So, I'm a millennial. I went to university about 15 years ago, and at that time it was really seen as the norm to go out, to party hard, to maybe drink a bit too much, especially during Freshers Week. And actually, the younger generations are questioning whether that's the way to have a full university experience. If you look at any data now concerning Generation Z, across the board it's saying that they're drinking less and that they're having more well-rounded personal and social lives, and that they are, much more focused on, finding hobbies and interests, meeting people offline as well as online, and pursuing their career skills. And I think that all that together means that actually, young people don't have to feel like they're missing out on anything if they go for remote learning, because there are plenty of opportunities to meet people through work as well as through the groups that the OU offers. And of course, there's lots of group learning involved with the OU as well, which gives you plenty of opportunities to interact with people your own age. So yeah, you really don't have to miss out on anything.
No, it's really interesting, and I think as well as that, I mean, even sort of, the education sort of like during the pandemic obviously sort of changed, a lot went remote. After the pandemic, some universities sort of kept elements of sort of remote learning as well, and sort of, a lot's changed really, I guess, and it's probably going to take a while if it ever goes back to whatever we call normal, to be fair.
Yeah.
But just your thoughts. What are your sort of like thoughts in terms of anyone sort of listening in, sort of considering sort of, going remote, who sort of, doesn't quite understand the sort of like, they might have a bit of apprehension, they're not quite sure, and what are some sort of thoughts that, I'm not saying to give advice, but anyone sort of listening in, sort of considering going remote, who's a bit apprehensive about it for one reason or the other, any sort of final thoughts you could sort of give them?
Well, think about what's right for you. It's not about what your friends are doing. It's not even about what your parents think that you should do. This is your life, and you only get to live it once. And when it comes to your education and future job opportunities, only you can know what's in your best interests. And if you keep an open mind and think about different ways of doing things, then remote learning could be better for you than a traditional education. That won't be true of all young people, of course, but it could be the right option for you. So do your homework, find out what's involved, figure out what kind of course you want to do, and it shouldn't just be about what will get you the best job in the future. Of course, that's very important, but think about what really fires you up, what makes you feel passionate. I studied music, I loved it, not the most useful degree in the world, but I've got no regrets because I really enjoyed that time that I spent studying that degree. So find what makes you tick, what makes you get up in the morning, and if you can go and study that subject, but also if you've got your eye on a job that you may want to do to bring in some money, just know that there is a way for you to do both those things.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I suppose, another story from the day, you mentioned like studying the music degree and other degrees. And I mean, I'm a university lecturer myself, and not long ago, there was sort of, I can't remember who it was now, some politician talked about sort of certain degrees and value. And I truly believe some of the degrees that, they said that didn't have sort of value are the most valuable ones, the arts and the beauty of studying a lot of other things, because they're transferable skills. I don't think degrees are always a means to an end. You might study something, but the skills you bring to I studied psychology, I've transferred the skills to many areas. So I think for learners out there listening, thinking, okay, well, there's certain degrees that might not have a direct pathway. There's an abundance of transferable skills. I know I've pieced it a little bit. Do you not think anyone listening who's sort of thinking, okay, well, they heard like an announcement that certain degrees aren't worthwhile, that they are transferable skills in many other programs?
I think that young people today are really smart and switched on, and they are capable of weighing up whether a degree represents good value, not just in terms of, whether it guarantees a job at the end, but as you mentioned there, the transferable skills that you can get from your degree. And look, you get out of your degree what you put in. That was definitely true for me. Even though music is an arts degree and it's not a kind of vocational one, I learned so many transferable skills that I absolutely credit with helping me in my completely different career today of writing and talking about personal finance. Learning music to a very high level absolutely was character building. It helped me understand the value of hard work, discipline, organisation, so on. That's so true of many, many different types of degrees, whatever it is that you may want to choose to study. And I'll just leave you with a couple of really interesting case studies doing two very different things. We have one involved with the campaign called Kiana, who's currently studying business and management at the OU. She's saving £10,000 a year by doing that. She's clearly a very switched on young lady. But someone I met up with at the weekend, he went straight into civil service after leaving school. That wasn't his plan A. He was meant to go to university, but he wanted to get a job, earn a bit of money so he could go on a gap year, and then actually got a job in the civil service, was earning a lot of money, and thought, well, I still want to learn. So he enrolled at the OU, studied history, really enjoyed it, and went on to have a very successful career in the civil service. So those two examples of how you can do things a slightly different way and still go on to have a very happy, successful life.
Indeed, and thanks for joining us on the show, Iona. Some interesting and informative insights. Now that the listeners have sort of, got a lot from the interview. Just finally, if any listeners want to know more about the research or any more information, can you signpost them anywhere they can go to sort of read a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find out more by visiting open.ac.uk, and it's not too late if you're thinking about applying to the OU. Registration deadline is the 7th of September.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time, Iona, and I wish you all the best. That was Iona Bain, consumer finance expert, who was kind enough to join us on the Friday Sports Show, 94.5 FM. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.